On behalf of UAF Summer Sessions and Lifelong Learning, I'd like to welcome those of you in the room, as well as those of you watching via live stream, to this evening's Discover Alaska lecture. My name is Naomi Mitchell, and I am part of an organization for educators called Delta Kappa Gamma. Our members are introducing the Discover Alaska speakers each week. UAF, we acknowledge the Alaska Native Nations upon whose ancestral lands our campuses reside. In Fairbanks, our Trophiata campus is located on the ancestral lands of the Diné people of the lower Tanana River. This year's Discover Alaska lectures are presented by UAF College of Indigenous Studies faculty members. Tonight you will hear from Tia Tidwell, Assistant Professor of Alaska Native Studies, who will discuss The Land Loves You, Honoring Relational Responsibility. Tia is an Assistant Professor of Alaska Native Studies. She belongs to the Nunavut people of Anaktuva Pass and currently resides on the lands of the lower Tanana Diné people. Tia holds a Bachelor's of Arts and Master of Arts degree in English Literature from UAF and is currently a PhD candidate. Sounds like you're almost done. She investigates cultural artifacts produced by settler society in order to understand foundational conceptions about land and belonging in relationship between imagination and policy. Welcome, Tia. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Oh, I'm louder, so I turned it on correctly. Is that right? Okay, good. Hi. I'll go ahead and get started. Actually, this is kind of freaking me out. Is there any way I can, it's good. It's loud.
Are you getting feedback from your computer?
I think so. I'm talking and it's like...
Yeah, so turn your computer sound off.
Oh,
You might be getting feedback from that.
hello. That's a little better.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel a little nervous right now. So I introduced myself. So the story of this being Trophiata, I have had the opportunity to work with a group of people who's planning the Indigenous Studies Center, which is going to be built on the hillside. And I was able to do a plant survey up there. And we still have the wild potato plant that was harvested originally. It's there isn't quite a harvestable amount up there right now, but I think it's really cool that that plant that brought people to this place is still kind of thriving there. Okay, I also wanted to have a moment to remember Dr. Mary Erlander, who passed today. I'm sorry. I thought it got, because I got an email about it, and then I know people that were in the program, I think they were trying to email out, but maybe it was people who were students of hers. Dr. Mary Erlander was one of the founding people in the Arctic and Northern Studies program, which is where half of my PhD is in, and she was one of the first people that I talked to when I was interested in doing a PhD, and she was so supportive. Did you know Dr. Erlander? Oh, she's a beautiful person in Fairbanks. And she also helped me extensively with my PhD application, so I just really wanted to honor her memory here at UAF. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about What the Land Loves You. The reason that I kind of have this little drawing and this little The Land Loves You is because I was having this conversation with a young person. They were I think they were 9, and they said this thing. They were the earth, everything would be better off without humans. We're just ruining everything. And I was shocked by that feeling, because I kind of grew up in a culture of belonging. We have responsibilities, we're accepted by the land, and we have we're supposed to be here. The land made us, and the land cares for us, and but I think it's not surprising to me that young people have this idea. Oh, sorry.
Could you speak a little louder?
Oh, yes. I normally project quite a bit because I teach, but I was talking quieter because the mic is on me. I'm not surprised that young people have this idea about land because there's a lot of narratives. Like we have the way we talk about climate change, and I think the way that we interact with land now, it makes it feel like we just harm the land. But I think that doesn't have to be the only way that we think about land. So I like to kind of start with this, like, let's all like take a second and just feel it. Like the land loves us. Everything that we have is from the land, right? So like if you're here alive, as you all are, that means that the land has upheld its side of the bargain. The land has cared for you body and soul, and kept you alive and nourished you. And so I think where the breakdown is like, are we then in return doing our part of the responsibility towards that relationship with the land? But I think that if we have a kind of a negative feeling about how we're interacting with the land, it's not the land's fault. The land loves us. And we should feel that love because I think it's really important. Okay, so that's where I start with that. Oh, next slide. Pause here for cute pictures of hearts in nature. This is just something to go along with that idea of the land loves you. I just think it's so lovely to come across all these little reminders of how loved we are by the land. Like all these little hearts just out of nowhere. The rose petals, like they're so cute. They taste so good, and they're heart-shaped, and they're pink. The village that I come from, you can only get there by airplane. And I was coming back home after my Anna's funeral, and I like looked out of the plane and I saw this like heart in the ice, and I was like, oh, okay, it's gonna be okay. And then this is just on Cranberry Ridge. Those trails up there are really beautiful. You wanna check them out? There's a heart-shaped little nook in the tree. Okay, next slide. This is my family. This is one of my favorite pictures of my family, so I share it often. But actually it's a little bit older. So the girl in the front that's all bundled up, she's out there, she's a teenager now. But I also want to share that my husband, Dr. Hirsch, he also works at UAF, so you might know him from the political science department. Okay, next one. We already did a land acknowledgement, but I think a lot of times they can feel a little bit performative, especially when they're institutionalized. I've worked with different institutions, and a lot of times people want to like have a really specific language about their land acknowledgement, because they don't want to mess up. And I think that instinct is good, but I also think that something gets lost in what a land acknowledgement is when it becomes institutionalized and approved by HR. But really what it means is to recognize that like this place that we are right now has been a homeland for a really long time. And I am here and I love it here. It's so beautiful. It's so well stewarded. And so when I'm here, I have gratitude for the people who came into being as part of this place, because they're still here. And when we talk about that, and we acknowledge that, then it keeps that space open for them to continue as part of the future way that we think about this land here. So I come from, Alaska looks like this, I come from up here in the Brooks Range. And so when I'm here, I'm a relative, and I'm grateful. And so I like to think about, well, what does it mean to be a guest? What does it mean to be a good relative? And I think we all have our own ideas about what that means, but I love having this conversation with kids before they get desensitized to the idea of what a land acknowledgement is, because they all have like really good ideas, like, well, if they have ideas about like how you're supposed to act or what you should do, and it's their home, then we should do those things too. And I'm like, yes, that's what a land acknowledgement is. Anyway, so I'm just inviting you all to think about like, what does it mean for you personally to be a good relative? Okay, next slide. That's my Anna. I teach at the university, and in a lot of educational settings, we often have like a very like middle age group of people. But in like Indigenous knowledge systems, learning happens within a generational context. And so when I was thinking about that in education settings, I tried to think about like, what does it mean to try to bring in a generational context when we're in a university setting? And so a lot of times I try to invite wisdom from elders into these spaces to kind of add some of that generational learning and make the learning feel a little bit truer and more complete. So Elder Sarah James is an elder here in the interior, and she has this like really beautiful quote or idea. When you think of everyone who is older as an elder and everyone who's younger as a youth, then everyone is cared for. And I just think that's so, like, if only we all were walking around the world acting like that. Like, can you imagine what a beautiful place this world would be? I mean, it already is, but it would be even better if we all had that. So I'm inviting that generational thinking here in memory of my Anna, who's there on that side, and then my youngest daughter, which is just one of my favorite pictures. We both love salmon, and it's salmon season. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the reason I'm here, which I get a little nervous about public speaking, so I'm always like, wait, why am I here again? Ever felt imposter syndrome? Here, okay. But the reason I'm here is because I really love plants, and I've had this kind of like lifelong relationship with plants. And for me, what that's meant is that anytime anybody says anything about plants, I just say yes, like I'm here for it. And so usually that is more of a workshop, like teaching people how to harvest or how to work with different plants or how to make things. But I have been invited to start to give like a talk like this, and that was really difficult for me to like translate. Like, how do I turn like how to harvest yarrow into like thinking about what our relationship to land is? Because I think, you know, you can look up a recipe online, but like how are we thinking about that relationship? And so I started to think about like, how do we think about what land is? Like, what are the stories of like, what is land? And how do the stories that we tell about what land is kind of shape how we are interacting with land? And then in my language, we call land Nuna, and it doesn't directly translate land to Nuna. Nuna is more like the land that is our home, that we know and knows us. So it's kind of in that one word, you have kind of a different kind of concept for what land is. Okay, so we're going to look at a couple of origin stories and kind of use those to kind of understand how we think about what land is. Next slide. Okay, this is the story of Adam and Eve. A lot of times, generally, people understand what this story is. Like, there's generally awareness as to what the story of Adam and Eve is. Like, people kind of know what the components are. So, in the story of Adam and Eve, where are they at? Where does this take place? Garden of Eden. Okay. So the Garden of Eden represents perfection, right? It's peace and perfection, and it's how things are supposed to be in their most ideal state, right? We all kind of know that about the Garden of Eden. Like, even if we didn't grow up in a really religious home, a lot of us have enough cultural references to understand how this works. In the Garden of Eden, you have, like, famously, like, the lion lays down with the lamb. So there's no predator-prey. They're just like kumbaya. You also have, like, you don't have to do any labor. Like, everything is freely given. So in this place, you have God, who placed Adam and Eve into a state of perfection. Okay, so then what happens next? Anyone? What happens next? Yeah.
Oh, well, she takes a bite of the apple.
Okay. She takes a bite of the apple that she's not supposed to take. There's rules in this place. The apple's going to come back to us later. But in this, she takes a bite of the apple. She gives a bite to Adam, famously. And then, because of that, there's a rupture that happens, and they get kicked out of the Garden of Eden. And they get thrown into what? Does anybody know this, like, kind of, we hear this word in Alaska a lot. Wilderness, right? So they get put into wilderness, and wilderness is punishment, right, for what they've done. So that story sets up the land that is around us is a place of, it's a punishment. Like, we're not in our ideal state. Things are not how they are supposed to be. We've been punished, and now we have to, like, work the land and suffer. And you also have a little bit of a hierarchy. So in this story of Adam and Eve, who's at the very top? Kyle? God's at the top, okay? And then who's below God in the story? Deanna? No? Okay. Ari? Who comes next?
Angels.
Okay, angels. I forgot about the angels. You're right. The angels come next. But mortal, who comes next? Is it the animals that are next after God, or is it Eve? It's not Eve. Who is it? Adam. Okay, so you have God, then you have Adam, and then after Adam is Eve, and then after that, God gave all the animals to Adam to name, and Eve to eat, maybe. So you have a hierarchy, and then below that is this wilderness state, which is like this punishment place where you have to, it's not how things are supposed to be. And so you have this kind of hierarchy, all right? So I'm talking about these as origin stories. I don't ever want to offend anybody when we're talking about, especially religion. I teach history of colonization, and there's a lot of religion in that. And I think sometimes people can feel anxious or defensive when we're talking about religion in this way, but there's no moral judgment as to around these stories. This is a story that we culturally know and shapes how we interact with land. And so I think because of that, we should look at it and think about it. So I'm going to share some other origin stories that are just different. They're not better or worse. Okay. Oh wait, next slide. The apple came back. Surprise. I got ahead of myself. So this is, so after we get to this space of wilderness, how then does wilderness that was given as punishment to Adam and Eve become property? Like, how? That to me is a leap. Like, I'm like, whoa, how did we get here again, right? Because now we have like plots and subdivisions, and there's like these signs that say like, we'll shoot trespassers, right? Like, we live in Fairbanks, we've all seen those signs. Okay, so how did we get there? So this is John Locke, and he was a theorist in the 1700s. And a lot of times when you have people like the Pope or a theorist like John Locke, and they try to explain a concept, they're not inventing it out of nothing. What they're trying to do is explain what already is. And so he comes up with this labor theory of value, and that is kind of explaining how property came to be, and it makes sense. So if you have two people and they're just out, were just plopped. Like Adam and Eve were two people that were just plopped, and they come up to an apple tree, which they did actually come up to an apple tree. Well, it could have been any kind of fruit, but they come up to a tree. The apple doesn't belong to anybody yet, right? Because they just were teleported to this place. The tree doesn't belong to anybody, nothing happens. So it's totally fine to then walk up to that tree and pick an apple and eat it. Well, in this case, it wasn't fine for them, but normally it would be fine. So you have the apple. So then if you go to like take a bite and then somebody runs up and grabs that apple from you, it feels wrong. It feels like, wait, this apple's mine. So what he does to explain that is like, by mixing our labor with the land, that's how land becomes property. And so in order to own land, you have to enclose it, so you got to put it in a fence, or you have to mix your labor with it. And this idea for how we think of what property is, it explains everything about land in the United States, and it also explains why land wasn't considered owned when Europeans arrived, because they were like, well, you're not using it properly, and so therefore you don't own it, and now it's ours because we put a flag here. Sidetracked. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is a picture of Sky Woman that I found online that I liked. Who knows the story of Sky Woman? Raise your hand. A little bit? Okay. So I feel like generally we're more culturally aware of the story of Adam and Eve, but there's other stories for how and what land is. And so this is the story, and I'm relying on the retelling of Sky Woman by Thomas King in The Truth About Stories. So Sky Woman is living in a place with other people and persons, and she's curious. And so she's always kind of poking around. Her curiosity is not bad. It's not a negative thing. She just is curious. And one day she's kind of poking around and she starts digging a hole under a tree to get something. And she keeps digging, and somebody is like, oh, hey, you might, she gets a little bit of caution about it, but then she's, oh, I'm just curious. So she just keeps going. Well, then she digs it so far that she just falls through this hole. And then she's kind of just falling. So this is the next part of the story. She's just falling in the sky. And she's plummeting towards Earth, so the land that we're on right now. She's plummeting, and it's all blue. It's all water. And the Earth already exists, and the animal people are already there. And the animal people are kind of like, she doesn't look like she can fly. She looks like she's plummeting very quickly. And so she looks in need of help. And so they kind of converse together, and they're like, what are we going to do? Okay, she needs help, we're going to help her. And so the high-flying, strong birds, they fly up to greet her, and they make kind of a soft landing. So they're kind of breaking her fall, but she's pretty heavy, and so they're kind of talking down to the other animal people, and they're like, okay, we're coming down, but she doesn't look like she can swim. Like, she can't fly and she can't swim. Like, she needs help. So then the turtle is like, just put her back here. Like, I can hold her on my back. And so they put her on the back of the turtle, and then everybody's just like, okay, let's take a breath. She's arrived. We've got her safely onto the back of the turtle. And then they start to look at her and realize, like, oh, she needs land. She needs something from us in order to survive. She can't just survive on the back of a turtle. So a lot of animals try to get her land. Many fail, but eventually a very humble animal is able to get that land for her, and that sometimes is an otter, sometimes is a muskrat. It kind of depends on who's telling the story, but a humble animal gives her this land in their little paw and put it on the back of the turtle. The turtle has gifted this place for her to be. And so she puts the land down and it smooths it out. And then there's a plot twist. She's pregnant. She didn't know, but she found out. And so all of a sudden she's like, oh, I'm gonna have babies. So she has her 2 babies. I actually had twins too. And it was really shocking when I found out that there was 2 of them in there. I didn't find out until I was 5 months pregnant, and it was like, whoa. Okay, so she must have felt something like that. So she's shocked. She has these 2 children, and they are different from each other, as my twins are too. They don't have anything in common. These twins don't have anything in common. One of them is starting to like make the land very neat and orderly because that's their personality. They like to have things in lines. So they like make some rivers, straight lined rivers, and they like plant the trees, straight trees, and they do their berry bushes, straight berry bushes. And the other twin is like, no, the vibes are off. So then they go in and they're like, ooh, I think the river wants to go this way now. And like, actually, let's do some thorns on that bush. And like, ooh, ever heard of mosquitoes? Let's have those. So you have this kind of like mix, right? So in this story, this is the story for how North America came to be, right? There's a couple components that I want to talk about with this story. The first is that the land was already here with persons here before humans arrived. So Sky Woman arrives, and she's seen as in need by the animal persons. And the land and the animal persons accepted her as she is, this curious woman, and they gave her what she needed, which was land. And then in turn, she mixed herself with that land, and what we have from that is what we see outside. We have North America. So in this story, you have at the top the animals, and then after that, you have the woman, and then after that, you have her male sons, and then after that, you have kind of the way that they were interacting with land. So that is a different conception for what land is and what animals are and how we relate to them. Because in this story, humans need the animals and need the land because, I don't know if you've noticed, but like we can't fly, well, I guess we can fly now, but like not on our own. And we can swim, but some of us can't. Basically, we need help. Okay, next slide, please. So that's a story that belongs to like Indigenous people in like Central North America. But I wanted to also talk about an origin story from here in Alaska. So this is a much cherished book of mine. Simon Paniak was so he was my Anna's mom's dad. And these are some recorded stories from our people. And one of the stories is about how we came to be where we are, how the land came to be around us. So in this story, the story starts and the humans are already there, but there's no land, it's just water. So they're in their umiaks, their boats, and they just live in their boats, and they have to hunt, but it's hard because there's no land, they're like living in boats all the time. And every once in a while, they see a little tussock kind of like floating around. And this is exciting. Yeah, I love it. They're like looking and they're like, okay, that tussock, I really want to get that land. And so we send out our best hunters and we're like, okay, like just try and get that land for us. And so they're like spearing it, harpooning it, bow and arrows. They can't get it. We're good hunters, but we're just not good enough. And then in this story, Raven sees our plight, and they're like, oh, these humans, they're not that good of hunters. He's like, but I am a very good hunter, and I will help them. And so Raven is like, okay, I will help you hunt this land. And so he goes out, and he spears the land for us, and he pulls it up for us humans, because we're just a little helpless. And as he pulls it up, the water recedes, and like our larger animals, like the whales, and in the story it says like giant snakes. I'm really glad that those have moved further south. So that they kind of carved their way back to the ocean. So we have all this beautiful land with all these beautiful rivers that are going through it. So in this story, again, you have human people are kind of there, and then we have access to the land because it was gifted to us by Raven, who had to help us because humans need help. So in these other origin stories, the difference is that the humans are not at the top of these. We're we're always the youngest. In all of these other origin stories, we're the youngest, we're the last to arrive. And also we need the most help. But in these stories, the land and the animals have agreed to help us. And so that's why we're here, is because of the help that we're getting from the land. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. Thank you. Maybe. Oh, the raven that you see here, the beaded ravens. This is, I like to share artwork, but Ink Stitcher, she's on Instagram, and her art is so beautiful. And she made this white raven after that white raven has been spotted around Anchorage, which is really cool. Okay. Uh-oh. Okay, you're good. Oh, perfect. So when I was thinking about like talking about the land and how we relate to it, I wanted to share those stories as kind of thinking about how we come to think about the land as it is, because the first origin story that we talked about, the story of Adam and Eve, it's shaped all the laws that we have that govern the way we interact with land. And so it's really important to understand that the laws that we use to govern land, they come from this conception of humans being up at the top. So for example, the doctrine of Christian discovery, which is the law that was used in order to justify the theft of indigenous lands all over the world, which is like, we're talking way back in like 1100. So that, you're welcome to come in if you want. Okay. That became precedent in the 1800s, and that's how the U.S. legal system works. Is like you make a decision, and they use the doctrine of Christian discovery to justify the U.S. owning all the land, and so then that decision becomes a Supreme Court justice like decision, and then other decisions like keep getting made. And so, but the premise of the way that we govern land and the way that we govern indigenous people is all based off of that like papal bull from the 1100s. So, let me get my, I'm gonna take a drink of water and slow down. Okay. So, a lot of people are surprised to know that like the doctrine of Christian discovery, like a papal bull from the 1100s, is still being used to make decisions about land. So most recently, Ruth Bader Ginsburg decided a decision in 2005 using the doctrine of Christian discovery as precedent, like in order to make a decision about Oneida land. And so I think like it can be really, a lot of times people think about like, oh, a papal bull from the 1100s, like of course we're still not using that to make decisions about how we govern land, but actually we are. So that's why it's really important to understand like, what are the stories for how that world looks under this system of thinking that is still kind of governing the way that we interact with land. So these are just kind of, when we look at these origin stories, what I'm hoping is that when we see something, when we see like the pattern of thinking behind how we're interacting with land in a certain way, then it gives us the opportunity to like decide to dismantle that way of thinking. Like we don't have to think about ourselves up the top. There are other ways of thinking about how we react or interact with land. Like we can think about other ways of thinking about how what the human place is in our ecosystem. And so I have here there's a quote from Chief Seattle, which I really like, but then also this idea of Scylla, which is, so I'm Inuit, and the Scylla is like an Inuit concept for like this idea that everything is connected. And so I also really like this other picture by the same artist, which kind of shows that, like, that we're all kind of just like connected to each other, and it's not necessarily hierarchical, except for the fact that humans tend to always need help. Okay, could you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So what then is the right way for us to interact with humans? What is the right way for me as a human to walk? Which is a question that Vine Deloria asks. There are quite clearly, of course, different ways we should act towards different things. It's not some priority of being or even priority of values that determines this difference of behavior. Our relationship to different things require different behaviors in order to act rightly. To act through our relational reciprocity as a metaphysical and moral expression of kinship. But this does not require different kinds of significance for the things to which we are related. So we can take this idea of like us being related to everything, but that does not mean that everything needs to be treated as a human person, because there are all sorts of persons to which we have a kinship relationship to, and it's our responsibility to then listen to those things to understand how we're supposed to act toward them. So what does it mean to listen to our plant relatives or animal relatives or land relatives to which we are kin in order to understand how we should act towards them? Okay, next. Okay, so I wanted to share some plant-y knowledge, but before we do that, I wanted to insert some more elder wisdom. Okay, so I love this title. Dr. Reverend Elder Grandma Anna Frank, who's a very active member of our Fairbanks community and is just amazing. I was talking to her and I asked her, because I teach a lot, and I was like, hey, is there something that you want me to share with people? And she thought about it, and then she was like, we were created in a way that allows us to talk to ourselves. And she said it in a way that made me realize that that's actually kind of weird. Like, I'm like, whoa, I am like kind of sending myself messages all the time. Like, that is kind of, we were designed that way. And her thing that she wanted to convey is that we were created intentionally, we're created perfectly, we're good, and we can talk to ourselves. And so she said it's really important to use that power judiciously and wisely, which means that we need to talk kindly to ourselves. So I'm going to pause here so you can all mentally say something nice to yourself. Sometimes it's hard. I hope you guys all were able to easily think of something nice to say to yourself. I won't put anybody on the spot by saying, like, what did you say to yourself? Okay, and then over here on the other side is an elder from my community, Elder Solly Hugo. And I was visiting with him, and I asked him, you know, is there something you'd like me to share? And he said, look at you. You're on the edge of your seat. You're leaning forward. He's like, I've cast a spell on you with my words. You've been listening to me for an hour. Like, our words create action in the world. A lot of times we think about words as like just say, because they're ephemeral, right? Like, except for right now, this is being recorded. I'm very nervous about that. I feel like it's really hard to translate from like talking to people to like, anyways, it's fine. I won't think about it anymore. Okay, so words can feel ephemeral, but he really wanted to emphasize that like our words create things in the world, which is also really cool. Like, he was right. Like, I was on the edge of my seat, like listening to everything he had to say. That was not the only wise thing he said, but it's the one that I'm going to share right now. I'll save some for later. Okay. So, given that, next slide, please. Given that our words are powerful, there's a concept when you talk about plant medicine. I love to share about plants and how to harvest them and what we can use them for and how cool they are and what you can make. But I was taught that you're not supposed to introduce a plant by only being like, this is how you use this plant. This is what this plant is for. Because it takes a whole being and it reduces it into like one thing, like how we use it, which is not how we're supposed to relate to plants. So whenever I go to share information about plants, I remember that there are elders. This picture here is a really cool, very old plant. You've seen it on the trees, the old man's beard. So this plant is very closely related to algae, and it's really old. Like basically it came out of the water, perfected itself, and then just like didn't change for a really long time. So, and a lot of times you'll see it on trees, and you must think like, oh, it's like eating the tree or taking from the tree. It's not. It's just like resting gently on the tree, like it's an air plant. Anyways, I really like this plant. Okay, and it reminds me that our plants are like so much older than us. Okay, next slide. Okay, so before I jump into thinking about some of the ways that we use plants, I want to speak kindly about plants in this space. So what are your favorite plants? Does anybody have a plant that they're like, I really love this plant?
I love chocolate lilies, but only because they're beautiful, I think, even though they smell bad.
Oh yeah, you said you were from Sitka?
I lived in Sitka, yeah.
I went to like a thing in the Tlingit Ani, so it was in Juneau, and a plant person took me out and introduced me to the chocolate lily, and what a gorgeous surprise. You have this like beautiful lily, and then you dig underneath it, and it's a little ball of rice, and you can just eat it. It's so delicious. Yes, I also love that plant. Does anybody else want to share a plant they love?
Cotton grass.
Cotton grass, like the little, why do you like it?
So many reasons.
Yeah.
I love the way it moves in the wind. And it's such a resourceful plant that I think is overlooked often.
And it's something whimsical about it, like,
Dr. Seuss.
Dr. Seuss.
oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Okay, one more. What's a plant you love?
Sundews.
What?
Sundews.
What are those?
The little carnivorous plants, they grow in the bogs, and they have like the little droplets of sticky stuff on the ends that they use to capture insects and digest them.
I love carnivorous plants so much. They're so cool. Yes. One time I had the opportunity to go into like the University of Washington gardens, and they had a whole greenhouse full of carnivorous plants. And I went in there and I was like, take me. Take me, I'm yours. It was really cool. I love carnivorous plants. Okay, I feel like we're in a good space to talk about plants. Thank you for sharing. Uh-oh, I'm locked out. There we go. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we're still kind of thinking about this question of like, how are we as humans supposed to relate to the land around us? Like, what's a good way for us to walk? So this is, knowledge does not float free from relational context. So when we think about traditional ecological knowledge or indigenous knowledge about the land, that knowledge is always place-based, right? Because it's like we have learned this by living sustainably here forever. But the value system for how we learn those things, those concepts can be moved from place to place. And a lot of times when you look at like the ethical harvest or the honorable harvest or how you're supposed to relate to plants, there are really similar indigenous values across many different places. And so I think there's like probably a reason for that. So if our systems of knowledge, what we consider our ultimate learning tools, can tell us nothing of meaning and value, then they are incomplete forms of knowledge. So we should create values in our knowledge system. So when I think about listening to the plants to learn how we're supposed to react or interact with them, it's okay to use every kind of knowledge, right? And so sometimes you can read a scientific paper. That means you're listening to the land, right? That plant has given information about itself, and it's been written down. So you can read that, and that's listening to the land. You can learn things from people who have been interacting with a plant for a really long time, and they can share things with you about that plant. That's also listening to the land in a different way. And so I like to encourage people to learn as much as they can about the land and plants around them in all the different forms. So if that means reading science papers online, going to a talk like this, hanging out with your elders and learning from them, and your young people. Like I just learned from a UAF student that she did a study on blueberry leaves. And so I obviously know that our blueberry berries, so delicious, are really high in antioxidants and very good for us, but also apparently the leaves have the same level of antioxidants in them as the berry. So you can make tea with the leaves and it's very healthy for you. So yeah, you can learn from the plants in all sorts of different ways, and you can listen in a lot of different ways too, because the plants aren't just saying to us, they don't speak English. We have to like learn to relate to them on their own terms. Okay, next slide. Okay. I'm not going to read this, but this is a quote from Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. If you have not read that book, that is the book you should read. It's so beautiful and good. And she also wrote this other book called Gathering Moss, which is also really good. But this is kind of an example of how value systems for how we relate to plants are often shared across Indigenous cultures. So like, basic things like you don't ever harvest something until you understand how that is in the ecosystem. So if you see something like a berry or some yarrow or whatever, don't ever harvest the first thing you see, right? Like you keep walking and you make sure that it's healthy and that it's signaling to you that it's abundant. And then another thing is like, what are you giving back to the land? A lot of times people from different cultures, sometimes they don't know how to give back to the land if they haven't been taught. And so for some cultures that could be giving a gift of tobacco to the land, because tobacco is highly valuable. So it's saying, I'm giving you something valuable back. Or it could be taking some of your hair, which is full of nitrogen, and burying it in the root. And that is like, I'm giving something back to the land that I've harvested from. But it doesn't have to be like that. Like other gifts that we can give back to the land could be recycling, or it could be using less electricity. It could be, this is one of the things that I like to think about, being grateful for what you have. We live in a culture that really prizes like getting more all the time. And so sometimes a gift to the land can just be, I have enough, I'm gonna sit with that. That's not an easy thing to do. I love shopping, so it can be like, especially at WEO's happening right now. Really good shopping there. But like it can just be like sitting back and being like, as a gift to the land, I had this bountiful berry harvest, or I had this bountiful moose harvest, or this bountiful this, and now I'm gonna sit back and I'm gonna try to take less from the land because I got this big beautiful gift. So there are different ways to think about like what it means to give back to the land, and you can give back in a way that makes sense to you culturally, right? Like maybe you're somebody who works at the Department of Natural Resources and you have like a voice that you can use in advocacy. You can show up to give public comment on like different things that will impact the environment. There are lots of different ways you can give back to the land. Okay, next slide. Okay, I think I talked about this a little bit. But this is yarrow, one of my favorite plants. So in one of the earlier slides, I had a picture of chaga, and then I like to contrast that with the yarrow because they're so different. So these are two of my favorite medicines here in the interior. but they require such different things from us. So yarrow is, who here, or sorry, I said yarrow, but I was looking at chaga. I got myself mixed up. Who here has had chaga before, or harvested chaga, or you like know about it? Okay, people are all abuzz about chaga these days, for good reason. It's so cool. But chaga is a very slow growing plant. Chaga helps, so chaga is a fungus that grows on birch trees when the birch tree is under some kind of stress. It comes in and it creates this kind of like beautiful crust on the outside, which kind of is scar tissue. And some people call it a parasite, but I really don't like that because it doesn't take any, like the lifespan of the tree doesn't change. And also environments that have chaga in them are healthier ecosystems. So, but it takes the medicine of the birch tree and it makes it available to us as humans. But it's also something that is part of the ecosystem and needed in the ecosystem, and it grows very slowly. And so because people are really excited and interested in chaga, sometimes they'll see it and they'll just take the whole chaga plant off the tree and they won't know that that is like maybe 10, maybe 20, maybe 30 years old and also part of the tree. And if you take the whole thing, it can make the tree susceptible to more injury or stress. And so this is one of those things where you want to know that you should only take 25-30% of the plant, and you have to learn about chaga in order to know that about that. And you can contrast that to yarrow, which is another super strong medicine plant, but yarrow is everywhere. Do you guys all know what yarrow looks like? Like this plant, you see it in Fairbanks? This plant is everywhere, and this plant loves to be messed with. So it grows most abundantly in like cleared spaces and disturbed soils and riverbeds and parking lots. So like the more you interact with this plant, the happier this plant is. And so they're both plants that are strong medicine for us as people, but they are asking us to interact with them in different ways, and we can learn that by listening. Okay. Next slide. Oh yeah, these are just pictures of harvesting for fun. I always share this picture because some people here know Dr. Jessica Black. She's awesome, one of our awesome people at UAF. And so this is just us out harvesting, I don't remember what. And then my daughter and her cousin, and then we're over here doing willow root, willow bark, which is our willow bark here. Just happiness all around. Okay, so next slide, please. So this, I love this. This is my youngest daughter, who you saw at the beginning, also loves plants. And she's young, so she's 7. And she always likes to say, people don't think I know as much about plants as I do. She doesn't like to be underestimated because she also really sees herself as a plant teacher. But she also loves plants, and she made this beautiful piece of art by just gathering different plants and arranging them beautifully. And then she gave it to me as a gift. And I really love that because a lot of times when we interact with like the land, or we interact with the land as medicine, we think about it in terms of like the properties that it has. But our relationship to land is the foundation for all aspects of our health, including our emotional health, our community health, our spiritual health. And so this is an example of plants being medicine in no way other than being beautifully arranged on a piece of paper. Okay. Moment of silence for how cute her artwork is. Okay, next. That's her up in the corner there. It was just more, oh look, it's a heart-shaped chaga. So cute. Okay, we'll go next slide. Okay, so this is something that I developed just in thinking about like plants and how we interact with them and how our relationship to the land affects our health. Because a lot of times when we think about plants and how it affects our health, we think about it in terms of like blueberries are really high in antioxidants, so if I eat blueberries, that's good for my body. That is one way that the land impacts our health. It impacts our physical health. we'll go back, yeah. But when we think about our relationship to land impacting our health, it's not just the physical health, what we eat and how we walk on the land or interact with it that way. It also affects or is the foundation for our mental health, our community health, our emotional health, and our spiritual health. So, for example, let's say it's berry picking season right now. The blueberries are ready. Yes, I'm so excited. So let's say we're gonna go pick blueberries because that's good for our physical health. Who here has picked any kind of berries? We're all berry pickers in here? Okay, you guys are my people. So when you go picking berries, a lot of times what do you do when you go to pick berries? You pick up maybe your cousin or your sister, or you take your kids with you. It's kind of a group thing because you don't want to get eaten by a bear. And so you get together as with the people that you love, and you go outside onto the land. That is good for your mental health. But while you're out there picking berries, it's also good for your emotional health because you're developing and sustaining the relationships with the people that you care about. And then if you're following the principles of the honorable harvest, after you have your bountiful berry harvest, what are you supposed to do with that? You're supposed to take a part of it and you're supposed to give it to somebody else. So that's up here in our community health. That could mean giving it to somebody who doesn't have the same mobility that you do. It could mean giving it to somebody who has to work 8 to 5 every day and they don't have the same flexible time that you have. It could mean giving it to an elder or just somebody who needs berries, right? And so think about how that simple berry fed our physical health, our emotional health, our mental health, and our community health, right? So it's kind of all mixed together. And I have different examples of like how plants kind of help us with these different things, but I want to draw attention to this here. So these are dried, edible, like flower petals that grow in like throughout the different seasons. So you get your bluebells first, and then your rose petals, and your yarrow, and all these different flowers. And summertime here is delirious, right? It's like full sun all night. It's so beautiful. Everyone is happy in the summer. Not everyone is happy in November. Like when it's dark and you're tired. I like always have seasonal depression like around that time before Christmas happens. And so another way to think about like mental health and plants is like in the summer when these plants are blooming, I pick them to create this thing that is beautiful because I'm preparing for when I will be sad in November, right? And so then in November, I'll get out my petals and I'll make tea, or I'll put them in a bath, or I'll just look at them and I'll be like, you know what? The flowers are gonna come back and you will no longer be vitamin D deficient. So that is like one of the ways that like our emotion, like the plants are helping us with our mental and emotional health alongside like just the things that are good for us, like chaga. I think I'm gonna pause there and we can turn off the recording. I brought some chaga to share. I also have examples of different plant medicines that are all right outside and easy to interact with. And so if you wanna learn about these plants, I'd be happy to, yeah. What do I do? Oh, yeah. Well, we can turn off the recording, or we could keep it. I don't know.
This is part of my instructions. Does anybody have
Oh.
questions?
Oh, okay. Yes, questions. Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you for coming. And there will be Discover Alaska lectures every Wednesday until August 13th. Thank you.
Thank you. Tavra. Yeah.